Good evening and welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haines of the Sky High and Fly Jump Camps fame. And this evening we are going to be talking with a young man named Skyler Mott, and he is from Lehigh University on the East Coast. He is a junior and he is currently just jumping out of the building. He was a 6'7" jumper last year. His very first meet, he showed jumps at 6'10 3/4", which he made, and took good jumps at 7 feet. And they were just all kinds of hang time, and he just got a ton of pop. He looks great. So did a promotional post of his, and he got all kinds of likes. And so just decided to see if he wanted to be on a podcast, and he said yes. So we'll welcome him here into the chat room, and we'll get started here in a minute on Raise the Bar with Troy Haines. Stay tuned.
Hey, all right, there he is, the famous Skyler Mott. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. So it's 10 o'clock your time?
Yes, yeah, it is 10 o'clock over here.
All right, well, we don't want to cut into that precious sleep recovery time of yours.
Fair enough.
So what grade are you in out there, Skyler?
I'm a junior, so I'm in my third year at Lehigh.
Junior in your third year. Okay. And which university are you going to? I saw the meet that you sent me was Lehigh versus Lafayette. Which one are you at?
I'm at Lehigh.
You're at Lehigh. Okay. And then where did you do your high school jumping, and what kind of athletics were you doing other than high jump when you were in high school?
Yes, so in high school I went to Friends Academy, which is in Long Island, New York. I actually was mainly a basketball slash soccer player.
Mm-hmm.
Track is relatively a new thing to me. I let's see, I started in my 10th grade of high school. I was a triple jumper, but I had never done high jump.
Mm-hmm.
Then my 11th grade, 12th grade, one of them was a COVID year, so we didn't have competition.
Right.
And for team's sake, I was scissor kicking in high jump for points. So
Right.
my senior year of high school, I would scissor kick. I think I did 5'10", and then that was about the gist of my like high school high jump career. I was mostly
Okay.
a basketball, soccer player. That was like my thing.
Okay. So how did that turn into getting you high jumping at this high level at your university?
Yes, so I came to Lehigh mainly because I thought I was capable of playing basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I had looked to like potentially walk onto the team. I liked the academics. I liked the distance from home and the size of the school. And then I guess what ended up happening was the basketball team had 20 plus members from COVID. So the hope was it was very difficult to stay hopeful. And I wanted to stay active. So I looked into the soccer tryout, I looked into the basketball, and then I looked into the track.
Mm-hmm.
And the track tryout, the way that went was you got to train with the team for about 12 days, and then you got to compete in the first meet as an unattached athlete. And that, I guess, determined my future. If I could do well and beat the other athletes on the team, then I'd have a spot. But if not,
Right.
then I guess my career would have been done.
Right. So how did
Uh,
that particular thing go? How high did you jump, and did you open some eyes? What happened?
Yeah, so it was my first meet ever jumping with like any sort of form or technique. Um, the big goal was just being coachable.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was really what we were trying to do. I ended up clearing 195, which was about 6'4".
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. 6'4 3/4. Yeah.
yeah, 6'4 3/4", and that was a big deal for me. It was a third attempt clearance. I think I got second place out of everyone, out of every college in the entire meet. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a very good start, and I was fortunate enough they gave me a spot on the team. So here we are.
That's an interesting way to start. Yeah, like you're at a college meet and there's just a tiny bit of pressure, and so you came through
Right.
with flying colors. Now, yeah. So I never really did my intro. This is Welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haines, and we're speaking with Skyler Mott, who is from the East Coast, and he's at Lehigh. I got that right?
Yes, yes.
And he is now, I saw it as usual, just a running joke on the show, but I see most of my future podcast guests on Instagram. So I saw your Instagram feed. Many of the high jump, will come by me one way or the other because I have all the hashtags that I need to, I guess, to get them to do so. Sometimes, they follow the site, at Sky High and Fly Jump Camps. And other times I think it's just what do they call it? The algorithms, the algorithms of what I watch. So I'm always, I'm a jumps coach, so I'm always seeing high, long, triple. I see pole vaulters, and then a lot of general track and field comes my way as well. But the meet that I saw of yours was you sent. I can't remember how it happened. Either you posted it, or I asked you if you wanted me to do a post of you, and you sent me the Lehigh Lafayette meet where you jumped 10 3/4 and took good jumps at 214, right? So 7 feet and a quarter. And that was amazing because, first of all, I think everybody in America that saw it thought, why did this kid open at 6 feet or 5'10" or whatever you open at? Because your first jump was like a foot clearance. I mean, it was like the easiest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, okay, wait. And then, repeat, make for a while. I think you went through 6'6" clean, then a miss maybe at 6'8". I can't remember. And then a make, and then, a couple misses at 6'10", then a make. The jumps at 7 feet weren't awesome, but you could see the height was there. The timing was a little off. And so, yeah, it wasn't that they weren't awesome. It's just that, you didn't have that same, the clearance. But I remember going, wow, this is a huge, I just saw talent oozing out of your pores. So the next question that I have, Skyler, is what the hell happened? How'd you go from 6'4" 3/4 to 6'10" 3/4? What have you been doing?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, in the past 2 years, I've had a couple different coaches. We had two different coaches at Lehigh. So I guess I've just been trying to learn as much as I can about the sport, being particularly new. I I guess you can say I somewhat became addicted. All I do is watch high jump. All I do is watch track and field.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's like the pros, Tambiri, Barshim, but then a lot of like looking for people who might have a similar jumping style to me.
Yes,
So
I love that.
I spent a lot of time trying to find someone who fit my build physically, because
Mm-hmm.
I find not many high jumpers. I'm around 6 foot, so I'm about 6 foot one,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm about 190, 195 pounds, depending on the day, give or
Yeah.
take. So there's
Mm-hmm.
not many people who are built the way that I'm
Wow.
built and high
Yeah.
jumping. So it's been hard for me to find those comparisons, but watching, like Dontavius Hill and the
Mm-hmm.
guys like who are in the top of college, and then trying to copy and emulate that, whether it's
Right.
in like the plant,
Mm-hmm.
or for me, the biggest turning point last year, it got me, I think, about 3 or 4 inches more, was something in the like back bend of the approach. So being able to, I guess, take my head and I kind of put it backwards. I don't know if that's correct, but I like to
Mm-hmm.
throw my head backwards, and it's able to kind of create that downwards momentum and bring my hips up.
Right.
So once I had figured that out, it kind of got me an extra 3 or 4 inches from about 6'5" to 6'9".
Mm-hmm.
And then recently, I'm not sure what clicked, but I guess I went back to the basics. I've been doing 8-step approaches instead of like further approaches,
Right.
and just like jumping because I know that's what I can do. And
Yeah.
and it's over the 6'10" 3/4 now, 2 weeks in a row. So
Right.
it's
Right. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Watching someone grow, right, as you're looking at them. I love what you said about finding a comparable athlete. I'm trying to do that with my athletes all the time. Say, hey, because number one, I'm one of the busiest people you're going to meet. I'm actually training a different team every day of the week. I got 5 days of a week. I coach at Vanguard College, which is an NAIA school out here on the coast. And then that's on Tuesdays only. And I'm technically the jumps coach and the pole vault coach. But then we don't really have any jumpers. It's kind of this weird thing. They have all these multis and they have sprinters and distance people. So I work with the multis to try to get them to high jump and long jump. And I have one of the guy multis who does pole vault as well. And then the one jumper that we got this year got hurt. So he hasn't been doing anything. And one of the girls that we had who was on scholarship for 2 years just quit because her injuries had kept mounting. And, so it's just long story. Somebody new every day. I've got a ton of athletes that I'm kind of helping, at least one day a week. Some of them I'm writing programs for, whatever. But I'm always telling them, I go, hey, one of the things you have is a huge advantage. I get kids asking me all the time. I go, what did you look like when you jumped? And I'm like, dude, I have no idea. I have nothing. I have no video. I have nothing of me when I jumped. My senior year at UCLA was 1986. Nothing. I don't have any video. So I don't even know where those VCR tapes are. I know we used to film them because I had a big RCA camcorder that was this huge behemoth thing back in the day, 35 pounds, on your shoulder. Then they, eventually you'd see people with little handheld ones. And then now people just use their phones,
Right.
So finding a comparable athlete, we couldn't find anything. If you weren't watching them right when you were jumping against them,
Right.
you didn't see comparable athletes. You just saw yourself, and even then through a dim view. So you have all this wealth of knowledge at your disposal, which is so cool. I learn a lot by watching Instagram myself, and watching different training methods all the way around the world. Getting what I call the peek behind the curtain. Like, what are they doing in Poland?
Right.
What are you doing over there in Italy? Some great stuff going on there. You pick things up. Some things are just confirmations for me. I'll see somebody doing something like, yeah, we do that. And other times I'm like, oh man, that is a really cool drill. I like that. I'm gonna steal that and put it to work,
Right.
And then what you said, wow, 6 feet, 6'1", 195. Now I've got a comp for you. He's a little taller than you. He's a little heavier, but similar. And that is, I don't know if you've seen Jordan, the Jumpman Westner. Have you followed?
Oh, yes.
He did a podcast with me 2 years ago. It was right before the trials, so it was actually closer to 3, I guess. And he was 6'3", 210, 205, 210, and he jumped 5 3/4. So he's the guy, you've seen him now. He dunks from behind the free throw line. So no lack of hops and surprisingly heavy, But if you've watched Zion Williamson play for the Pelicans, anybody that's 6'10" and almost 300 pounds, he could jump like that, maybe weight isn't such a big deal. Although, the exploding shoes thing should have taught us that kind of mass takes its toll, right? So he's always been hurt. So that was one of the things that I struggled with. Was I was 6'3", 195. So you're at 6'1", about the same weight. And I was accused of being a decathlete many times, by most of the other high jumpers because they were all tall, skinny guys,
Right, exactly.
So yeah, I remember thinking that when I saw you, Skyler, I was like, this kid's kind of, thick. He looks like you don't look like a tall, skinny high jumper, and then your approach speed was pretty good, I thought, for someone, again, please, if you're listening out there, 195 pounds is in no way heavy or fat. But I've been brainwashed like many other high jumpers. It's like, oh, it's all about strength of weight. So when you see someone who's carrying a little extra weight, sometimes like, oh man, I don't know how it's gonna work. And then you watch you come off the ground, like, oh no, that works. And you have a skill of going pretty straight up. I don't know where, who taught you how to do that, but so yeah, amazing stuff. I'm interested in hearing what you said about your throwing your head back. And then other than that semi-new trick that you mentioned within the last year of your jumping, is there anything that your coaches have taught you technique wise? Are your coaches more like trainers, or do they have technique tips for you?
Yeah, I think I'm super fortunate. The coaching style that I've been accustomed to now in the past year or two has been super collaborative, in which we're using the sources that are the internet and like obviously the personal well that is the history of competition and learning from them. But it's I will see something online and I'll say, hey, like, I saw this. I know I PR'd last week, but I think this might give me another inch.
Right.
And it's very open dynamic of, okay, yeah, let's try it. Why
Yeah.
not? You don't know
Right.
what's going to happen. Maybe that will make the difference
Yeah.
because to us and to me, my thought has always been I feel like I am just about as strong and as fast as some of those guys who are at the top in those seven mids.
Yeah.
So what is it that I'm not doing that they're able to do to give them those extra inches?
Right.
And
Right.
just finding those little things, and maybe one or two of them will work for me. Um, for some reason, I've always had a super, super like vertical and not distance of jumping ability.
Hmm.
I've always been super close when I'm jumping over the bar.
Right.
Um, like I can't long jump for the life of me. My long jump, like personal best, is very, very low, especially compared to like my high jump, and even my triple is much better than my long jump.
Right. Right.
And I'm not quite sure why that is, but I'm assuming it has something to do with basketball and dunking
Hmm.
and that's how I've always had to jump is you
Yeah.
just go up, you're just trying to get to the rim
Right.
as quick as possible. So that's what you do.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think what you're mentioning there, and this is my personal viewpoint if you want to hear it, but I knee drive to me is everything in the high jump. So, one of the first things I look for if someone says they come and they say, I want to try the high jump. I'm like, okay, here's the bar, go ahead. And I'll just watch it because, sometimes I'm just like, the kids that come over in high school have probably already tried three other events. They went out for sprinting and they're really slow. And then they went
right,
out for distance running and they don't have any endurance. And so they keep making their way around. They tried the
exactly.
throws. They're not strong enough to throw. So then they're like, hey, I want to try the jumps. I'm like, okay, yeah, knock yourself out. I put the bar at 3 feet, and after one jump, sometimes like, you know what? I think your track and field career is over. And then other
Right,
times, you see a great knee drive all of a sudden, and you're like, okay, if I see a knee drive, I'm tempted to just go, yeah, I can work with you because it's hard to teach someone from pure scratch. Like if you can't
mhm,
jump at all, you're probably not going to be able to jump. If you have some rudimentary form of getting off the ground, and that has
right,
to be a one-legger because so many people come to me that have either played soccer or volleyball, and there's something sometimes about they go to put one foot on the ground, then the other foot comes on the ground. No, 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 you got to jump off one foot. And after you demonstrate it two or three times and they still can't do it, then it's like, okay, yeah, it's time for you to go away. But then
right,
if they can drive that knee, and I'm like, hey, drive the knee. So there's a couple things that you talked about that I'd bring up to your attention. This is just the way I think of it, and I've been seeing it. And I mentioned it on your post. For you listening out there to raise the bar here with Skyler Mott from Lehigh, I did a right after I saw him jump his 6'10" 3/4. I said, would you mind if I did an analysis post of you? And he very graciously said yes. So I pointed out a couple things in his video. First of all, he has a tremendously good lean back angle. And what I mean by lean back is basically in the one direction. People, if you don't have any math background or anything else, I tell people to think of the high jump is kind of weird in that, in basketball and volleyball, for instance, when you were playing, most of the time you probably didn't run any curves. When you make a move, you tend to go straight to the basket. Now, if you have to go around someone, you might run a little curve, right? But sometimes you get a breakaway or whatever. It's like you just run straight to the hoop. You're going to run a straight line. And there's all kinds of athletes out there who can lean back and jump up and touch the backboard or touch the top of the backboard for crying out loud or, whatever. And, it's very easy in one way, I say, because all you're doing is running in a straight line. If I'm running in a straight line, I am by definition not leaning to the left or to the right. Because as soon as I lean left or right, I'm going to run a curve, whether I want to or not, because you're off balance, right? And you'll lean that way. And you have to run fast enough to stay up on the curve or you'll fall over. So I'm like, if I'm running in a straight line, it's very simple. I just lean back, I go heel toe, and I jump straight up. And I try to grab the rim or I try to do whatever, right? And so that's pretty simple. A lot of people can do that. And I tell people, I go, you can have tremendous hops and jump straight up in the air and have all the gifts that I need, especially if you're doing it off one foot, and still have trouble because of that approach. It's that curve throws a lot of people off. And I'm like, the curve adds to your own natural leaping ability, which you obviously have in spades. So if you're leaning to your left, like you do, came from the same side as you. So you're on the right side coming left, plant your left foot and you're leaning back, it shoots you up in the air. Now, the thing that's crucial is that knee drive. It has to both come up. And if you watch any high jumper, and I'm sure, Skyler, you've done this, and I'm sure many others have done it, when you watch, almost all high jumpers are going to get the knee drive to at least hip high, right? At least parallel to the ground. Sometimes higher, which I think is better if you can do it. One of your things about comps, I remember watching Derek Druin in 2016 when he won the Olympics. I'd never even seen the guy before, and I had literally not been paying attention to the high jump for a long time. I had quit coaching for a while, and I always watched the Olympics, and when I saw him, I was like, oh my gosh, here's this guy, because he had a night, right? I didn't know that he'd already won the Worlds that year, but I'm like, who's this guy from Canada? Oh my gosh. Power approach, right? Power bound at the start, drops into the curve. He's running like a deer. He's really fast. I found out later that was a former decathlete, believe it or not. And then when he was visualizing, I'm trying to show this, but he was doing the knee drive from this side, and he's going like this. He's kind of doing the Dwight Stones, like here, 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 boom. And then he did one when he was standing there, and I'm not kidding. His knee came up right under his chin. Like just on his visualizing, he drove his knee up and it almost hit him under the chin. And I'm like going, I can't do that even when I'm stretching, and I'm like, holy crap, that's a great knee drive. And so you see that and you go, well, what's the deal with that? Now, a knee that comes straight up is good for long jump and triple jump, because long jump and triple jump, you're running in a straight line. If you bring that knee straight up, you just keep going down the line. You're probably not going to bring it up as much because A, you're going too fast, and B, you're not going to lean back as much, right? But in the high jump, when you're leaning back and to the left, like you're doing, and if you're running fast enough, what looks like to me is that the knee drive comes across a little bit and does something that I call cover the opposite hip. There's a great demonstration online with Stefan Holm, who's similar build to yours, 5'11", and jumped 7'11", right? So he jumped 242 and won the Olympics, I think, in 2004, either 2000 or 2004. And so he's got the record with Franklin Jacobs for jumping the highest over his own head, right, at 2 feet. So his knee drive, it goes up and across like nobody's business, right? And I keep thinking the physics of it for me is that it goes back into the curve and it stops that swing that tends to go across. So I'm teaching my guys, we have to be leaning in 2 dimensions. You have to be leaning on the straight back. You have to already be leaning to the left or to the right, depending on which way you're coming on your curve. And the knee drive is it's kind of like just taking all that stored energy and it goes right up through the knee drive. And if you don't do anything with that, you're in trouble. And then I try to preach and teach now. This is based on the last couple of years, but I've had a wealth of young athletes. Now you have an amazing amount of patience. Like for someone who learned the head back move, that we'll call it.
Right.
I'm going to say there's 2 ways to talk about it, but head back to me has a different connotation than head down. Head back is when you're still going vertical and you throw your head back. And in my estimation, it's A, too early because you're not leveling out yet, and B, wrong direction, because I don't need any help to go across the plane of the bar and get into the pit, especially running at high speed like you are. As soon as you put your foot on the ground, you're going to start going up and across to the right. You don't miss the pit. I always tell people, I go, you're like a train. You don't miss. You will go across. So when you come around and you drive that knee up and across, it slows down that swing, right? And you get a chance to ride it out. Now, if the head goes back while you're still going vertical, I believe you're cheating your center of mass. Your center of mass has a chance to keep going up, and you're trying to prematurely start to lay out. And I tell people, I go, you would think that when you start your layout earlier, that you would rotate more. So when you watch people, they throw their head back and they're still going up and their head isn't even at the bar plane yet. That's, in my estimation, way too early. So they're already, and some people are super bendy, right? They get in these great positions. And I'm like, yeah, you're in a great position here, but you're like this. You're in what I call high C. I need you to look like a slinky. Like when you finally decide to drop in, if you watch Barshim, he doesn't throw his head back until he can see down the bar. Exactly. He's looking down the bar and all of a sudden he goes boom, but his head goes down because he's almost horizontal before he initiates. And
Right.
that's the huge key. And it's really difficult with the young ones because, you know, they watch and they see someone with a great layout and they're thinking, oh, I need that move. And I always try to keep it out of the picture for a while. Like I say, hey, I want you to run fast. I teach them to cycle. Say we're going to figure out what kind of arm drive you're going to use because everybody's different there. Get that knee drive up and leave it up. You know, work on hitting vertical with all kinds of different drills. And then I'm like, just if as long as you can, just drive your knee up and sail over. You know, don't worry about laying out. And like you found, yeah, but there is a point where if I can get in a nice position up on top, I'm going to pick up some inches out of there, you know.
Right.
But I like to tell jumpers, I go, if you're planning on, if you have a good layout and you started it early, I'll go, now what are you going to do? You know, because picture a jump where you jump up and you throw your head back ridiculously early, but you're so flexible and so strong that you can hold it forever and you rotate all the way around. Then you got to yank your feet over at the end and you make it and the bar's going like this. And my next question for every jumper is, now what? When the bar goes up, how are you going to milk any more out of that layout? Because you just got every little ounce that you could out of it. And the truth to the matter is that you need to wait and let the jump finish from far enough out where you can hit vertical. And like you said, you've got your advantages in that you've managed to hit vertical. One of the reasons to get people farther out is to get more time to hit vertical. But now I'm just ranting and raving. So let's get back to you. I want to talk about you getting over 7 feet. When is that going to happen?
Hopefully, hopefully soon. That's really the goal. It's obviously something that I've wanted for at least the past 3 years now. It's what I've had my eyes set on. Our indoor school record at Lehigh is 218. So that would be ideal. It's about 7'1", I think 0.75 maybe.
218. It's either 1 3/4 or 2. Depends on how you look at it. There's some of them don't translate exactly right.
Yeah.
It's weird. Okay, let's back up then. So your freshman year, the first meet you jumped 6'4" 3/4. What did you end up at clearing that year as a freshman when you jumped your way onto the team?
I believe it was 198, so just under 2, maybe 199 at a championship meet, which is like
6'5.5" or 6'6". Yeah, so
So
198, I think is exactly 6'6". I can't remember. I think so. Okay, so something-ish.
And then sophomore year, which would be the year after that, I ended at 206, which is about, I think it was 68.75.
Yeah, it's close. Yeah, it's cute. 205 is 6'8" 3/4. So 206 is probably 6'9".
Oh, so it probably was 6'9 1/4 then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or 6'9, something like that.
Yeah.
But that's what I finished at last year, and then basically opening my season after January, after winter camp and training, at around 6'11 now. So the thought is how much can I go, and at what point do I decide to go back to 10 steps or even like more, whatever is correct? Because I'm still the approach is working, but there are times in which I feel like I'm not carrying enough momentum over the bar, and that maybe bringing a little bit more speed, if I can control the plant with that speed, will that be the extra inches that I'm looking for?
Well, let me tell you this first of all. My coach when I was in college, my senior year at UCLA was a little guy named Baru Elias who coached at Long Beach City College out here, and he had a jumper named Brian Stanton who went to the games in '88 in Seoul, jumped 7'8". And I used to train with Brian, and I trained for 2 or 3 different years with Elias. And I learned many things from Elias. And one of them was a really bad Romanian imitation of his accent. But he was like, you must beat the guy. Look at me. And he's like 5 feet, little specs, loafers with black socks, and, mismatched short shirt. He's just a mess. And I was always like, Elias, you never jumped over anything, man. Who are you kidding? But he was easily one of the best jump coaches I've ever been around. And he had 2 7'8" jumpers in his stable. So, and what was the point of bringing up Elias? It was always, we did a lot of short approach work. Okay. So I would typically do back overs, Based on that, when I first started coaching, we would do a backovers, we would do 1 step, 3 steps, 5 steps. And we didn't do a lot of full approach work. Number one, the area at Long Beach City for the full approach was terrible. It really was awful, bad, lumpy grass, and then about 3 steps on the rubber, you know. And so that was one of the reasons why I think we did that. But at the same time, I think might have been by design, just because, you know, full approaches take a lot out of you, right? So you can't just take a lot of full approach jumps at a practice, because you're going to run out pretty fast. It's just like a meet, right? Even with less adrenaline. So you probably have less of them. And so the short approach has the advantage in a couple ways of, number one, you can organize your steps pretty easily. I believe at lower speeds, it's easier to hit vertical, right? You're not carrying as much speed to blow through things. So it's a lot easier to go straight up if you're so inclined. Off of that back over and 1, 3, 5 sequence, I've invented 2 drills that I think I invented them, or if anybody else has done it, I've never seen it, but I started doing 1-legged backovers so that you get a knee drive with your hands up, and then you can work on your layout. So I get a knee drive, I go up and pop my hands, throw my hips, do my head back, like you're saying, head down, more technically.
Head down. Right.
And you know, so that's one thing. And then I have never seen anybody do the 0-step drill. And I just have guys put their foot on the ground and you lean back. So you can practice both your lean back and your lean to the left angle, and your foot's already on the ground. The advantage of which is, again, no slamming. I am not going to get a lot of shin splints doing the 0-step. I have no speed. So you literally have to be working on body lean and everything else, and really good takeoff mechanics. If you don't use your arm and your knee drive, you're not getting off the ground, because you have literally no speed to convert. But it can be done. And I like that one for that same reason. So the wisdom of the short approach in your training is that you can get a lot more reps done. Right. And I always tell my athletes, I go, keep your logs. You need to know what all your PRs are. What did you back over? Your best back over ever. I remember I got to 5.6, and I've jumped against guys who go over 6. I saw one dude online. I don't know if you've seen this guy, somewhere from Greece. I saw a guy back over 2 meters standing, 2 legs. I was like, dude, that's just not fair. So back overs, but, you know, keep them all. Keep all your PRs, because, you know, the same way that we generally train is I have them do that in their warm up at a meet, you know, especially if it's your meet, you're at home, it's your pit, you know, you kind of run the show there. And I say, hey, just do a couple back overs. But meet day is a different kind of day, because now you got juice, you know, so it's like you should be PRs are all over the place. You can PR every drill. You know, I remember the first time I jumped like 6.3 or 6.6 or something off a 3-step, you know, and when you start doing that, your confidence kind of goes through the roof, because you're thinking, well, dude, when I get to 5, I'm going to be carrying more speed. And when I get to my full, I'm going to even have more speed, you know? And so as all of them get better, and on certain meet days, you set new PRs, it's just like, you know, the confidence starts rolling. And to reiterate your point, I think I had longest approach I ever had right around 9 steps. I don't remember having more than 9, maybe 10 or 11 once. I was always started with left foot back. So it was either 9 or 11. And so we were doing full approaches my sophomore year, and I had jumped, you know, 210 in high school, but my freshman year I was terrible. So I had that adjustment year that a lot of people have. I didn't redshirt. I wasn't on scholarship. So I was number 7 on the depth chart. Nobody cared about me, and you know, but I just went through that year and just had a horrible year. So my sophomore year, I got in the weight room and lifted a lot, and I came out screaming in the fall. I jumped 210 from a 5-step in practice. And then we started early season. So anyway, we get to our meet against Stanford, and the bar was opened at 2 meters. No, I jumped at, I think 195 I opened at, and third attempt made it. And the bar went to 2 meters, and I think I missed twice and barely made it. And the bar went to 6.8 3/4, so 205, and I went miss. And I was I knew that I had 5-stepped 6'10 3/4, but for my full approach from 9, I am blowing through vertical big time. I'm just
Right.
crashing through. And I remember going, this is just frustrating the hell out of me. I couldn't figure out why. And I knew I was ready to jump, right? So I went
Right.
to the coach, I went to Bob Larson. I said, Coach, can I 5-step this? And I didn't know what he was going to say. And he goes, like any smart coach would, he said, sure, because high jumpers are mental, as we both know anyway. So he goes,
Right.
I'm coming up with out of desperation, but it was really kind of not. It was like I knew I could do it. So I get my third attempt at 6'8", and I'm not kidding. Like boom, like one of yours. Like I had 6 inches on that bar. And 10 3/4, which I hadn't jumped since practice earlier that year, but in a real meet since high school, boom, like nothing but air. And it
Wow.
goes to 250. What did we go to? 210. It went 215. So first time I ever jumped 7 feet, 5-step, 7 feet and a quarter and a half inch, 215, first jump. And then went
Wow.
to 220. It had to be 2.5. They were going by fives. And I
Right.
took two pretty good jumps at 2.5. And I found out right there that you need more speed because I,
Right.
I ran out of juice at 2.5. I couldn't translate the speed into height. So it took about another month, and we went up to Cal, and I went from full approach. I got 218. I got 272. So whatever it is, yeah, somewhere in there, 218, 219. I can't remember, but the slow is beneficial to a point, and I
Right.
think it's especially good during training. And then if you want to go faster, you can always move into a 3-step. You can do the European shuffle, I call it, or from your 5-step, maybe cheat the mark back a tiny bit more than your standing 5 and run into it. Then
Right.
you just a couple steps, but then you're carrying that little bit more speed without going full blast. So and it's tough, but sometimes you still do need to jump, at some higher heights. I don't know. The highest I ever jumped in practice, one time I went 7 feet. And I don't remember many of my coaches, and these are good coaches. I don't remember anybody really ever pushing for heights in practice. Now, you might remember it. And I've had the problem with some of my younger athletes, especially the boys in high school. All they want to do is jump high. They just want to put
Right.
the bar up. I want a PR, coach. I want a PR. And I'm like, yeah, your technique is crap though. When you go full blast, you start doing all your bad habits, right?
Right.
And because you're just giving it everything, and you're not able to focus on these things that we're working on. I'm trying to get you to where this technique is kind of part of your DNA, and it
Right.
comes out when you compete.
Exactly.
So another long-winded speech. I keep saying, listen to these guys talk. They don't want to hear you. All right. So what are you doing uh, other than the curious point is, like you said, you went from 6'8", 6'9", this year at 6'10", your junior year. First question I had was, where does that put you on your all-time list? And secondly, how have you been doing at your conference meets, and which conference is that where it's you versus, sounds like your big rivalry meet is you and Lafayette?
Right. Yeah. So the 210 jump put me third all time in indoor history.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a person above me at 214. His name is Viklev, and then there's a person in first at 218, and that's Adelu. So and they're both phenomenal jumpers. They're the same two jumpers who are 1 and 2 outdoor as well. But the
Right.
outdoor record is actually only 214. So the indoor record is 4 centimeters higher, which
Right.
it's interesting. It's
Right.
it's interesting. I'm not
Yeah.
sure why that is or why that happened, but
Right. Yeah,
um,
that's rare. It's rare. Usually the outdoor marks are higher for whatever reason. Yeah.
right. I guess, later along in the season, something along those lines. But it does give me opportunity. As far as the league, last year I finished third in the conference where it's the Patriot League.
Hmm.
So I was third in the Patriot League. I believe I lost on a tiebreaker. Um, Army and Navy, they tend to be the top two in the league. They tend to be pretty
Okay.
dominant.
Hmm.
Um, as far as, when I cleared the 210 bar, I was second in the league with one person above me. His name was Josh Gillard, and he did 211. Last week, though, he actually got over 217. So
Wow.
he had a nice 6 centimeter
Yeah.
P.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah, that's big. That's a big
yeah.
jump.
So, I mean, they had a big rivalry meet. So it was Army versus Navy. and a lot of PRs. So he went from 211 to 217. The guy who was below me, Ben Schneider, he went from a season's best 207 to 214.
Wow. Okay.
And then there are a few other guys in that meet who were over, I believe, 205.
These were
So
indoor meets still?
yeah, these are still indoor
Okay.
meets. So this was last weekend. So that now I'm sitting in third in the league with the 217, 214, me, and then there's probably 4 or 5 guys around the 205 range.
So now I apologize for this because I just am just so new to the extended world beyond my own existence, which, I was out here on the West Coast. And when I was at UCLA, we didn't even compete indoors. So
Right.
that has all changed. And I'm watching on my feed all the young athletes like yourself that are jumping indoors and training indoors all the time. And it makes sense now that I think about it because the weather's so crappy once you get, into the football months. It's cold, it's snowing, it's whatever it is. So you're kind of forced indoors and everybody lives in there. Well, first of all, the Patriot League, is that D1, D2? Where are you guys?
Division one,
It's D1.
it's Army, Navy, Lehigh Lafayette, Bucknell,
I was pretty sure.
Colgate,
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And
yeah,
then because the Army
Marquette.
Navy, one of my friends, Leo Williams, was on the 1984 team as an alternate. He was a Navy jumper. He jumped 7.7. So he made the team as the number 4 when Dwight Stones and Doug Nordquist and I think it was Milton Good were the top 3. So anyway, he jumped 7.7 when he was in the Navy. So he'll be happy to hear what you said about the one guy. And
Yeah.
then so that's that. And then indoor, you've got your league. And then do you guys have I don't know how indoor works. Do you have an indoor league championship and then go to
Yeah.
2As?
So there's an indoor conference championships that's in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then there is like 2 weeks, I believe, from there. So there's 1 week which is considered off, or IC4A, which is a Northeast championship.
Mm-hmm.
And the week after that would be indoor NCAA championships.
Right.
They take the top 16 jumpers in the country.
Right.
Uh, so
Okay.
that the number for that right now is actually, I believe, at 218. And last year it took 220 to go. So that's about the
Yeah, it
line.
depends on the year, right? It's always the top 16.
Right.
Sometimes they had standards in the old days, standards, and then they did the 16. Yeah. So 7 creeping up there towards 7.2. Okay. So you got your work cut out for you. You're already looking pretty good in the conference, but some of your competitors have jumped up in these last couple of weeks. But
Right.
when I watch you jump, I see a ton of potential. I can't, to keep any kind of a ceiling over you seems crazy. You got a lot of pop and it looks smooth, like really smooth and easy. So 7.2 is right around, I mean, 7 feet. Here I'm saying 7.2 is right around the corner. You're like going, can I get 7 first, please? 214 or 215 is on the way, right? And then
Right.
yeah, so awesome, dude. That's just amazing. And then for where are the indoor nationals?
So this year they're at Boston. They're at BU at
Okay.
the big famous BU track, which
Have you ever
is
been there?
I actually have not been there. I've heard a lot. I have a younger brother who goes to Holy Cross. He competes there.
Oh,
So
okay.
so he's competed at the BU track before. So
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So now tell us a little bit here at your weight again and height. You're not a tall string bean guy, and you've got some strong legs. I can see them in action. What have your weight training workouts been like? Like, tell us a little bit about the difference between like high school and college, which I know for me was monumental.
right. So I would say my senior year of high school, that summer when I had decided to start training for college sports and attempt to play, I first started really getting into lifting. I was lucky, the track and field coach there, his name is Franklin. He was a Jamaican 400-meter sprinter. He around, I think, 45 in the 400.
Wow.
Uh, super, super fast, super, super knowledgeable. So he kind of introduced me to the like hang cleaning and
Right.
the like snatches and press and
Right.
all of the kind of explosive type movements.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been trying to emulate that. So as I've gotten to college, it's very similar type thing where it's a lot of explosive, high intensity movements.
Mhm.
I guess depending on the point of the season, the reps kind of cut down. It gets
Right.
lower. This
You
week,
raise
for
the
example,
intensity, you go more intensity, or do you just go lower reps? Like, does the weight go up as the reps go down?
it does for the most part. As we're getting closer to championships, we slowly kind of dim down on the lifts and slowly start to cut off. But this week, for instance, is more of a max week where we did hang clean. We did like 2 sets of 2 and then 2 sets of 1
Right.
at the higher rep range. And then eventually it'll hit that probably week before cutoff period, which is no
Mm.
lifting.
Yeah.
And and that will be like fully like refreshed for championship week.
Right. 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 Yeah. So now answer me this. This is what I do with my athletes. I like to start and you take your big. How long was your training cycle? Did you pick 12 weeks or 16 weeks, or how did you guys write it up?
Yeah, so we started training, I want to say it was a 12-week cycle, but we started our preseason late October, maybe
Yeah.
something like that, something around that length. And it
Right.
was very little weight room. It was more kind of building up that base of running and cardio and stamina base. There was a
Right.
lot of Lehigh is well known for its hills,
Right.
and all we did were hill workouts and stair workouts and
Nice.
more fun, adaptive stuff, getting the opportunity to play like basketball sometimes and
Hmm.
sometimes playing volleyball, building that
Right.
kind of bonding team chemistry. And then eventually around November, you start to get onto the actual track and you
Right.
get into the weight room a little bit and you're kind of building that base for the most part.
Right.
So that's what it was really centered in. And then we have our like first meet just as to see where we are. And then we go away for a while and we kind of we get sent all the lifts and the running workouts and stuff
Right.
before we come for like a harder winter weight session, which is more like 2 trainings a day,
Yeah.
weight, running, intensity. But
Did
yeah.
you now as a high jumper, what's so many questions in my head because I love comparing notes. Um, First of all, in your base sets, let's say for your did you do squats or was it all hang cleans and snatch and push press?
We do squats. We do I try to stay in the less depth range. I try to stay in that more like quarter squat,
Mhm.
half squat, just like to make sure I'm staying quick and explosive.
Right.
Uh, and a lot of it for me, I like to hold heavy weight, not necessarily squat heavy weight, but I'll put a lot of weight on bars just so that I can kind of feel the force of it
Right.
to build up to that point. So we do a decent amount of squatting, I'd say. Sometimes it's normal squatting, sometimes it's like single leg squat and
Right.
chain squat, box squat, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Um, when you do those sets in say in the base period that you're talking about, like I remember my base period would used to be like 5 sets of 8 at 65% of your max, something like that. What were you guys doing?
Yeah, I would say that sounds very, very similar. Lots of times we'll have a hold at the bottom where there's a 3 or 5 second hold
Right.
with the chain so that you have that like I guess it gets what is it lighter or heavier as it goes down or goes up depending
Right.
on on what you're trying to target. But
Right, right. Okay, so
definitely
there's
pretty high.
I love what you said about the depth for you coaches out there that are training, your high schoolers and some of them have just started lifting, but you get someone who's been in the weight room with you for a couple years, the depth, there's a lot of arguments on that one, right? Because if you look at these high jumpers, like one of the things that I showed about your lean back angle is when you put your heel on the ground, your left heel, your leg is straight and your upper body is lined up with it. And I mean, you're leaning back big time. And so you have to have a tremendous amount of strength to do that. But if it's easier in a lot of ways if that leg is straight, because as soon as it bends the slightest bit, now is where the power comes in. Because if the step is too long, too slow, then that knee bends and you go way down there and you have trouble getting out. And that's
Right.
what happens to everybody when they go way too long on their last step. lower, slower, try to power, and nothing happens, right? Then
Right.
there's this flip version where that step is fast. You get it way out in front of you and that leg is straight. And then you get right off of it because the knee doesn't collapse, right, and go down. So the argument that you always used to hear was, well, I need to have that base power where from all the way down, full squats, right? Boom. And I've done full squats and I wasn't that crazy about it. I used to wrap my knees like crazy and go all the way down there. But you know, as I remember doing full squats at 1 rep max at 400 pounds. When I did that was the first year that I jumped 7'2". So
Mm,
that was a big stepping point. But at the same time, I think the cleans were just as I clean like 285. So, you know, the hang cleans, I never did power. My legs were weird. Like I think my legs are really long for someone who's 6'3". Like I have a short torso. When I'm
right.
sitting down, I've had people pick fights with me at bars because I look short when I'm sitting down because my legs are so long. And then you
Right.
stand up and you're 2 inches taller than them, and they're like, "Oh crap!" But it's like, you know, I have long legs, and so getting down there for those powers, you know, the power cleans was hard because my knees were way out over the bar, and I didn't like them, but I could do the hang cleans. You know, I like the hang cleans, and you know that explosive stuff. But there, the argument is the same because power cleans is a deeper bend. The hang cleans is that short, you know, quick snap pop, right? So
Right.
yeah, you've got both of those in there, both the sets and the reps. You know, 5 sets of 8. We started moving towards 5 sets of 5, like you were talking about twos and 2 sets of 2 and 1 and 1. You know, we used to do
Right.
3, 2, 1s and the same kind of stuff, right? So none of that has changed. The depth, a little different. One of the few guys that I've seen do any weights at all in his feed, by the way. If you want a good comp or at least someone to peek behind the curtain on, have you looked at any of Brandon Stark's stuff on Instagram?
I have. He's so fast.
He's so fast. He's a totally different type, right? Obviously, he's a single armor. But you watch he's doing a lot of those what I saw of him doing heavy lifts was one-legged step ups with
Uh,
a short little box, maybe 6 inches, a lot of weight. And it looked like a one-legged squat more than a step up, but it was still kind of a step up. And
right.
I remember him doing like 5 reps, and you can see when he puts that bar down, man, he just sits there for a second, like, you know, it was not easy, you know. And so I contrast that with, I don't know if you found Bondarenko's stuff on Instagram. Have you watched him as well? When
Yeah. Oh,
he's holding like 25-pound plates and jumping up
right.
and down and doing those little jump lunges or whatever, switch lunges. I'm like, really? And then one time he's leaning against the wall doing like a wall sit, and he's got an elastic band on one leg and he's doing like these little leg extensions. And I
Right.
remember watching him just going, what, what is this stuff? You know, I just laugh, but I'm like, you can't, I don't know how to do it. Like, it sounds like a bias, but I'm like, how does that work? And I'm like, oh yeah, he's 6'8" and he runs like an antelope. You know, it's like
Right.
he doesn't have to be super strong. He's just tall and fast. If you watch him, he runs off the ground. I was looking for some great arm mechanics when I really broke down his style, and he just kind of, you
Yeah,
know,
he just kind of jumps in. Yeah. Yeah.
he's not really hitting vertical either. If you watch him, he's way out there because he's going to blow right through vertical and take his time getting up there. And then the layout, nothing special there. He kind of reaches for his heel a little bit, you know, but
Right.
yeah, and he's jumped 7'11". So annoying. I used to get bothered, you know, a traditional American power jumper, you know, double arm. I would gather and, you know, and I had 40-inch, I had hops. I was like, I don't want to say I was like Jordan. I don't think I ever dunked from the free throw line, but I didn't have any problems getting up in the air. So it was like,
Right.
yeah, I had trouble. And the thing that it's weird for me to be coaching it now because I had to learn a lot of stuff about curve mechanics
Mm,
kind of down the road. You know, I was not a great curve runner. I wasn't very fast. You know, I wasn't super flexible. I always just had pop, you know, so I could get up. Getting over was a whole nother thing. But and then learning how to utilize the curve for extra spring. That's where watching guys like, you know, I got to train with the same coach that trained Doug Nordquist, but I watched Doug Nordquist run those curves. Like your lean back angle, it was at 45, and that's the reason I'm calling it lean back was that it wasn't a straight down the bar shot. So it's not completely right there. That's why when I get my own training center, if I ever get one, I'm going to have a straight down the bar angle. And then I'm going to have one where we're actually at a 90-degree angle, like from you to me this way, so that when I see you plant as you run by me and then make your turn, then I can see your pure lean back in that one shot, this. So you can see you leaning back. And if I have the other camera over here, then I can see you leaning to your left. And we can figure out, how important both of those pieces are. Right. And then I want another camera overhead so I can see the shape of the curve.
Right.
And force plates. I want force plates in the ground to measure how much time you spend on the ground and how much force is exerted, right? That momentous, that real quick explosiveness. Some guys are on the ground longer because they're slower, right? But they also are putting a lot of force into the ground to get that air. Mm. What about sprinting and plyos? Tell some of our young bucks out there some of the stuff that you're doing there. I have my own theories about yardage. You were talking about where you guys were running so much earlier, and I cringe at that. But go ahead. I was very bad at running. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I would say I'm not the fastest myself. I'm gonna we'll see. To open up the outdoor season, I may try and get into one or two sprints just to see what I can do. But I'm not very fast. I've never been very fast. I'm slower than all the other jumpers on the team. Um, we have definitely dimmed down the running in since the season has started. We do like shorter sprint stuff, maybe 30 meters, sometimes 60 meters will be the maximum like running workouts. Like
Yeah.
Lesser reps.
Yeah.
Or like 4 to 6 range we did this week. It was like 30s, which wasn't, too crazy. But I guess to emphasize that explosiveness, for me, I think partially because I'm a little on the heavy side and because my the way I plant isn't necessarily, I guess, facing the bar. My foot kind of comes a little bit more inwards to the left. It causes me a lot of shin pain. Because I guess the way when my foot hits, it kind of like bends in to a point where it hurts the outside of my left shin.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead. I'm thinking as you're speaking. Go ahead.
and I guess because I'm putting so much pressure and so much force there, it really flares up quite badly. So I find that I have to be smart about my jump days and how often I'm jumping. And lots of times we'll mix in plyometric days with the jump day
Right.
or whatever that dynamic is, just because I don't want to put that much stress on my shins, knowing I'm going to be competing during
Right.
the week later that week. I'm like a big believer in, if I want to get better at high jump, I should high jump.
Yeah.
So like, I love plyos. I love it for getting yourself to jump higher
Right.
and things like that. But I do more plyo work in the off season and more plyo work before things are started. Once we get into high jump swing, my high jump jumping days are essentially my plyometrics
Right.
in
Right.
in
Well,
my
they're the
mind.
same thing. Yeah. Plyometrics is a loose term, but yeah, I technically put short sprints, any kind of bounding, hurdle bounds, bleacher bounds, boxes, turf bounding, sand bounding, and jumping itself is all plyometric. Because
Right.
if anybody's not, if you're not paying attention, if you watch someone like again Derek Druin, Sotomayor, the start of their approach with the power bounding, the triple jump kind of long stride, boom, 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 like no cycling, just reach, 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 but explosively fast. Like you wouldn't want to try to run the 100 that way, but at the same time, it's not like they're lollygagging around.
Right.
And so you see that and you're like, oh, okay, bounding and sprinting are pretty similar. It's like, yeah, it's real close to the same end of the spectrum. So what you're talking about is something that I just did. Shameless plug here. If you're listening again, this is Raise the Bar, and I'm speaking with Skyler Mott, who is out at Lehigh University on the East Coast. His PR is 6'10 and 3/4. Made it 2 times already in a row this year, and aiming for a lot higher stuff to win his league against the tough guys from Army and Navy, and going hopefully all the way to NC2As this year. I'm sure you have lofty goals. We didn't talk about them, but I'm speaking in your place, but I know anybody that's jumping 6'10 3/4 with the kind of air you have can't help but think about those things. And then getting back to the point of my rant, I'm bringing up the fact that this I'm Troy Haines and this is my podcast. I just did a rant before we came on, and I haven't put it up on YouTube yet, but it was all about overtraining. So I have had the same things that you're talking about. Um, and it's a very slippery slope. Like, you got to be careful because you can't stop training, because, as you know, there's a real short window of when you stop training, your body starts to recover and then you feel good. And then those mega hops kind of go back away. You got to keep putting your system under stress so that your body remodels. And the only way to remodel for really extensive power is to do hard things, power and plyos, like we're talking about. So it's a very fine edge, and volume is the key. That's why I brought up the question earlier about what kinds of sets and reps. 5 sets of 8, 5 sets of 5, 3 sets of 3, 3, 2, 1, 4 sets of 2, 2 sets of 2, 3, 2, 1, all that stuff is lessening of volume, right? Number of reps drop and the intensity goes up. But you got to be careful. And then, how many jump days do you guys do a week? I was telling the story in my rant about how I in high school, we jumped on Monday, we jumped on Tuesday, because I was just like you. I'm like, you're a jumper, you jump. So I jumped Monday, I jumped Tuesday. We took Wednesdays were light, Thursdays were meet days. Friday we'd go light because Saturdays lots of times would be an invitational or some kind of a weekend meet. So you count that up. I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4 days a week. My shins were hamburger at the end of every year. They were terrible. And, I wasn't a really weak kid. I was 6'3", 180 in high school as compared to 195 after 1 year at UCLA. But my shin still bugged me a little bit my freshman year. So my first part of the rant was talking about the whole overtraining thing itself. You got to be really cognizant, aware. Number 2, there's quite a few exercises out there. If you haven't followed them yet, I recommend it highly. Go to the knees over toes guy and watch him. If you haven't seen him yet, do everything, the sleds, the toe raises. I do some of the stuff that he does in different ways, and I've seen other people do those too. So if you do any of the tibialis bar kind of things, those are crucial. You can do the stuff where you walk around on your heels. I didn't find those as effective for me. What was really effective for me was, I would put a loop around like a belt or something and put a plate, like a 5 or 10 pound plate. And I used to sit in our loft at UCLA, and I would put the weight hanging down over the edge, and I'd put my foot on the edge of the loft. And so the rest of my foot's just kind of hanging there into space. And I would let my toes drop, and then I would just pull all the way up, and I'd go all the way down, and I would do it until it burned, and I'd switch legs, and I would just keep doing it. I did that every time we jumped, every time we did plyos, every time we did, high jumping. And so that was generally every other night. It wasn't every night, because we did start to change a little bit in college. And the ones that really worked for me were doing circles, when I go down and around and up, down and around and up, both directions. And that was when my shin splints just went away. I mean, I never had shin splints again. And I remember thinking that would have been nice to know that trick, right? And then one of the great sprint coaches in the world right now, who was the sprint coach, got hired my junior year at UCLA, John Smith. He's created many gold medalists, Danny Everett, Mike Marsh, Steve Lewis, 400-meter gold in '88, while he was still at UCLA. Multiple guys. Otto Bolden, see him on TV all the time, still doing commentating for NBC. He was a UCLA sprinter with John. And John told me right after I had graduated, and I said, man, it wasn't my shins, it was my knees, and some other things were bugging me. And he said, hey, he goes, you got to be taking ice baths. And I was like, this is 1986 now. But in 1986, I was like, ice baths? Like, I've never heard of this before. And I was a kinesiology major. Ice baths, what does that do for you? And he's like, dude, get in the ice bath, 12 minutes minimum. Don't go any more than 20. And he goes, make it really, really cold and just sit in there. He goes, first 3 minutes are going to kill you. It's going to be painful, but once you're done, you're done. And I'm like, okay. And man, I was converted first time. I mean, when I got in there, I was just like, oh my God, I felt like $1 million. And I could actually double up my workouts. Like you're talking about doing double workouts. I would go in the morning and sprint and lift and do plyos or whatever I was doing in the morning. And I would ice bath in the afternoon. And this is when I was on my own, when I was out of school. I was actually making ice all the time. So I would be, there was no cheap way to do it except the way that I did it. But it was like, it was a long, slow process. And there were sometimes I didn't quite have enough ice. It would just be a little bit colder. But it was like, that feeling was like, boom, it was like full recovery. Literally, he was the one who told me that. He said, you can do an ice bath in the morning and come back in the afternoon and do another session. And so that's huge. But between literally the whole knees over toes guide repertoire, I recommend highly for your shins, your calves, your knees, all those things. And then the ice baths are huge. And at night, even without an ice bath, you should have bags of ice on your knees. Put your knees up and lay back while you're doing your homework, you're reading or whatever, you're watching TV, legs above your heart, 15, 20 minutes till they go numb. Don't start walking around on your legs when they're numb, let them warm up again because those tissues are cold and you can do damage to those tissues when they are so frozen that they don't want to move. So you just kind of let them warm up again, but yeah, that's huge. And the other thing I wanted to think about was what you're talking about, the angle of the plant, because I just had a discussion and Dwight Stones actually commented on a post that I made. Somebody, I forget what I was talking about, but it was somehow it came down to the plant angle of your foot. Now I was taught early on that to plant parallel to the bar. Dwight was talking about he doesn't believe in that at all. And we were talking about one of the jumpers on the one of the posts that I made, this Tyler Cash kid, and he was saying he was trying to get Tyler to put his foot planted at the back corner of the pit. And my contention has always been, I don't understand how that can work because I think it's harder to get your knee all the way around. And that's one of the crucial elements as a coach. And then this just seems to keep happening to me more and more recently, but I saw a gal and I copied the post. I got to figure out where it was, but she ran just super fast, a very tight curve, wasn't really deep. And I know she wasn't going down the bar because I could see the foot plant angle and it was pointed at the back corner, strict 45. And so heel toe. Yeah, but she could not be leaning to the left that much because it was literally almost a straight line. So, and she got the knee around and up and over and nice layout and nice rotation and everything. And I'm just like, okay, it hasn't been my experience, but the one thing that I would say is she was hauling ass. She was really running fast. And I apologize not knowing who that is because I know she's got a decent name. And I got to look at it more carefully. But I remember it was right in the context of this discussion I had with Dwight over a couple comments on a post. So my question to you is, when you're talking about this harsh angle, what are we talking about? Are you at zero, like parallel to the bar? Are you going past parallel? Or are you going aiming towards the back corner?
Definitely on the parallel side, maybe even a little bit like further, I guess, towards
Past.
that.
Yeah, a little bit more, almost
And
an angle than yeah.
exactly. I like that. That's where I've been. That's just what was natural for me. And I
Right.
was also told to place my leg towards the back mat, towards the back.
Right.
Um, um, so it's been that adjustment of, okay, try and put your foot here. And I find my foot does not hurt when I put it that way, but I
Mhm.
can't get that same like aggressive, mean, like
Yeah.
plant into the ground that gets me up.
Right.
So it doesn't, I just have to go the way that it
Yeah.
works for me.
I'm not a big believer in the 45-degree angle yet either. I have softened a little bit on it. And if one of my kids is, because to me, the more that foot gets, a 45 is getting real close to a 90. If I'm running with my foot and I'm running straight at the bar, now I'm a hurdler. So, you can't be a hurdler and be a high jumper. Nobody's going to be able to do that tight of a turn, and put their foot, the harder you crank that foot around like that, you're finding that angle. I would counsel you to try to get to a zero at least. That going past even a little bit will cause you to try to almost have to start jumping backwards a little bit, because you're technically, if your foot's pointed away from the bar, you're kind of running away from the bar now, even
Right.
though it's only maybe one step. So, um, but yeah, that I get it. I get where you're coming from. And I would just say, please, if you're out there, listen to the rant. And if you haven't followed yet, I haven't done any begging for followers before. I need to start. Hit the subscribe button at the channel on at Sky High and Fly Jump Camps. If you're listening to this podcast later, we post on YouTube first, and then they come out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and others. But the rant also, what was my point about the closing? I got all the other details in there too. The foot plant angle is big. Oh, the rant was also just about overtraining, and that's I really went off on just what was the point? The point is this: it's coming out my brain. Sorry, it's been a long day. The point was that it's better for you when you get to your big meets at the end, Skyler, it's better to be undertrained and fresh and bouncy, like you haven't jumped in 3 months, like that first jump workout when you can take 1,000 reps and you still come back the next day and you feel okay. You know that in the mid to late season, that is not the case. You know that when you have a heavy jump day, you're going to feel it for a couple of days after that, or you're at a meet where the surface is particularly hard or whatever, right? And you know you're going to feel it later.
Right.
It's better to be undertrained and fresh than it is to be overtrained. And you could, when I mean overtrained, I mean you could be technically sharp. You can be mentally sharp and focused. You could be doing all your techniques, anything that you've been working on very, very well. But at the same time, if you are running up to the bar and going, oh, this is going to hurt, that's never good for a high jumper, ever. So it's like, it's a real fine line. But I got to tell you this, when I got out of school and I was training to try to get to the trials, I would jump once every 10 days technique. Now, I didn't have a lot of tricks left to learn, but yeah, the temptation, this is very American, by the way. You are just as American as me. So think about vitamins, or think about protein, or think about weightlifting, anything that we go, hey, protein's a good thing, right? Absolutely. Well, then I should eat just a shit ton of protein. I should eat protein all the time. It's like, yeah, but no, because it can become toxic, as you eat a lot of protein, there are some ramifications for your digestive system, and on and on. And it's like with water soluble vitamins, vitamin C, you can take mega doses of vitamin C, doesn't do anything to you. If you take vitamin A or vitamin D or vitamin E in mega doses, they can become toxic because your body stores them in your fat cell, in your cells, in the cell membrane. So it's like that whole mentality that we have, training. Oh yeah, training. If this is good, a little bit is good, a lot more is better. Not always the case. And that's where you get to the fine line. And, if I was going to tell you any one thing, any little bon mot of wisdom to take with you from me, is that, man, that little overtraining gremlin is always sitting right on your shoulder, man. He just keeps whispering, and it's like, oh, come on, man. You could do something else here, man. Maybe you should do some sit-ups. Maybe you should do some stretching. Maybe you should do this. And what I would say is, okay, if that guy wants to go that way, just maybe say, yeah, I want to do a little bit of that. And I also need to take a day off, like, gee, I'm hoping you take at least Sunday off, right? After your Saturday meets. And then, maybe there's another day in there where you can just go, because you and I both know you can't do heavy sprint, come back the next day and go heavy sprint again. You're going to put at least one day in between there, and maybe not sprint at all on the day in between. Same thing with a heavy lift or a heavy plyo. So on those recovery days, what do? Do you mix in your stomach work on those days? Maybe a yoga day, maybe go in the pool, go swim, take some weight off of the bones and everything. But you're young, you recover fast. I feel it if I show a couple of demonstration jumps. Number one, I never warm up anymore, and I don't stretch. So I put the bar pretty low when I do it, but I'll still pay a price for it, for the next day. Like, oh God, what was I thinking? I should warm up and stretch. You guys can recover. So, you got any questions for me? I've been giving you a ton. And talking right over you, so I apologize.
No, no, this is great. This is all the information that I've been looking for. So it's nice to have it in a
Awesome.
central place, you know.
Awesome.
This
Yeah.
is
Well, I'm full of information, whether it's useful or not. This is a whole other issue. But I got if you get a chance to listen to podcasts, I'm always trying to unlock different pieces of the puzzle. So, we've talked to sprints guys. One of my great podcasts last year, I talked to a guy named Tony Holler, who has this philosophy called Feed the Cats. And he doesn't believe in sprinting any more than 100 to 150 meters, even for his sprinters that go up to, the 200 and the 400. He believes in full recovery. He's all about miles per hour achieved, PRs in miles per hour. If you're going to want to run fast, you got to run fast. But paradoxically, you need to recover. It's not about speed endurance, it's just speed. And so, I'm always trying to find someone who's doing explosive work, who's plyos. My very first guest was Aaron Washa, who's a fitness guy, and was trying to get into the NFL. Saw him do a 71-inch box jump off 2 feet, right? And 6 foot, wiry white dude. And he's awesome. He's went to Michigan State. He's got his degrees in biomechanics and, he's done a lot of research. He's been a strength training guy at Michigan State, I think. I can't remember all the particulars of Aaron's story. He's been on 3 different times, and he's always unlocking something for me. He's a lot younger. We have the same degree, but I went through UCLA and graduated in '88. He graduated from Michigan State like in 16 or whatever, so things change really fast. Like you were talking about pausing at the bottom of your squats. When I was at UCLA, they told us no isometrics, that isometrics had no place in training. Not that it was a bad idea, like it was not to be done. And the first thing I talked with Aaron about was he talked about triphasic training. And he was saying, yeah, he goes, isometrics is one of the hugest places where I made my biggest gains. And we were talking specifically about how in the hell did you do a 71-inch box jump? I think I did 60. I remember doing 5 feet worth of boxes off of 2 foot. And I was pushing it pretty hard back then, and I had decent hops. I'm going 71 inches, and I've seen even higher than that too. But I've seen him on his own post jump up onto the top of his truck, from his driveway with a 2-footer, right? And I'm just like, dang, dude. So, and he was talking about that, the isometrics, a lot of eccentric work, doing the going down slow and then pausing like you're doing for 3 or 5, and then bam, up out of there, right? So everything changes. They keep finding, new tricks, and there's always research. And I keep thinking, why is that? And then you realize, you go, oh yeah, because sports is $1 billion business. Football, basketball, soccer now. These guys are making $50 million a year to play soccer. Oh my God. When I was in high school, in junior high, they had just started at AYSO here in the States. Like everybody was playing soccer, but nobody was making any money. Like, oh yeah, you play soccer, whatever. Now, geez, soccer, basketball, football, tennis, anything that you have to explode quickly in any direction, we're doing that. I'm looking into nutrition. Had a couple people just recently, Cynthia Monteleone and Brad Kearns. Listen to those podcasts, some really interesting stuff, some very straightforward. And I would shamelessly plug for Brad here, his podcast called the Be Rad podcast. He's got all kinds of stuff on there, same kind of things. He was a world champion triathlete, number 3 ranked in the world Ironman triathlete, right? Who is now a masters performer like me. He's in his 50s, I think, and is doing high jump and 400 meters. And man, he knows. I listen to his stuff. I'm just like, okay, I don't know where he got his training, but I have enough training to know that it's very in depth because I'm listening to going, there's a couple $25 words in there. But so anyway, yeah, there's a lot of information. I'm always trying to get to the root of one of the parts of the problem. I still have yet to get a sports psychologist on. So that's if you're out there listening and you want to be in a podcast, send me a DM and this is another shameless plug, Skyler. Maybe you can help me. I want to get. I have had people send me DMs in the past with questions, and that's something that I want to do here on the podcast is have a mailbag. One of my favorite guys I listen to all the time is, I'm thinking about making up my own questions, or kind of like the rants, or just, if you do have questions out there, you're listening to the show, send them in, because I'd like to be able to help the younger guys like Skyler here with anything that I can give back, as it were. Oh, and I will get this one out. I just talked with Jeremy Fisher yet. Jeremy runs the Chula Vista Training Center here in San Diego. So I'm in Southern California. He's a little bit farther south, and it's the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Training Center. And they don't have any USATF funding anymore. So he's having to fund that privately with some different things. But it's an interesting program where he's trying to get some of the guys transitioned from their fourth year in college. Like you're going to be finding out at the end of next year. Let's say you jump 7.2 or 3 this year, and then next year you jump 7.5 or something like that, and you're nudging into the realm of national prominence and stepping onto the world stage, and then you graduate, and then it's like, where do I go exactly? Because maybe you moved off campus, or maybe you're close by and they'll still let you train there, but and there's like, who's going to coach you? And there's all these questions, and Jeremy's doing a great job through his. He's got a program there. I can't remember what it's called. I want to say MVA. I think he calls it MVA, but it's like a sponsorship program for athletes where they can go there and train, live, and the coaching. I don't know if it's exactly free, but it's highly sponsored. And we talked for an hour last night about how American jumpers don't get paid, and there's a wide disparity between the highest level jumpers and the sprinters. For instance, the 100 meters is now the glory event. The 4x1 in the Olympics is the glory event, due to Usain Bolt and whatnot. But, unless you're breaking a world record or winning a gold medal or something, you're probably not making a lot of money being a jumper. And we were attacking, why is that? We got some great young stars, Javon Harrison and others.
Right.
Javon jumped 7.8 and came in 7th in the last Olympics, right? Which I think is the highest anybody's ever jumped to only take 7th place at an Olympic. It's crazy. But there you have it. There's a wandering diatribe again. And we've kept you up way past your bedtime, young man. So are we going to be able to do this again? I want to be able to check in on you in a couple months, see how you did at your championships there in your league, the Patriot Conference, and then the NC2As and whatnot. So let's make a date to do this maybe in about 8 weeks or so.
Yeah, then that would be awesome. Hoping the progression continues the way it has. So should have some updates.
Yeah, you're off to a great start. Please do send us videos. Let me know music choice again. I actually really enjoy doing these reels. I can tell a small story here. I used to do these posts for you guys, and I would have I think you could do 10, right? So I do 10 different videos in there, and the reels started coming up, and I was like, God, these look really complicated, and I'm like a dinosaur. I don't want to say how old I am, but I'm, I don't understand technology the way you young whippersnappers do. So, and then the first time I said, you know what, let's just try one. I was like, oh my God, this is streamlined to make this so much easier. It was like, you bring in the video and then you can slide either end. You can cut the beginning. So I'm always cutting when people just sitting here going like this for like 10 seconds. I'm like, okay, when do they start? Okay, there they go. And then, sometimes they hit the pit, you see them jump around and they do their thing. And I'm just like, okay, we'll cut that because I just want to show jumps, man. I want to show, as many as I can. And I tell people, I go, hey, I want to show you off, man. Let's see your weightlifting, because I'm shamelessly trying to peek behind the curtain still. I want to see, how do you lift? What are the drills you're doing? What are your plyos? Are you doing any speed agility stuff? Show me some stuff, And so now that I figured out how easy it is, and the last piece is getting the music. So you gave me some good music. I want to keep that going. I get, everybody gets old white guy music from me. So I'm just playing 70s and 80s rock, and people are like, wait, My favorite is Jump by Van Halen, obviously, but I keep trying to find if there's ever the word jump or fly in a song, I've been finding them. So I keep putting them on there.
That's funny. I like that a lot.
All right. Hey, Skyler, it was a real pleasure meeting you. You're a very pleasant young man. I'm just a big fan. Right as the first couple jumps, as soon as I saw that lean back angle and the straight upness of your jumping, I was like, oh my gosh. And I see a lot more coming. I would also, this is just us talking. Cycle your feet all the way through your curve. Okay, that was a big thing with Elias. He was all about cycling. My coach, Alan Hankel, who worked with Doug Nordquist, believe in the high cycling stuff. So
Right.
less, it's very European. The Australians tended for a while to just do the front and pick the knees up and then not cycle their feet, although Brandon Stark cycles beautifully. So, and you're watching that, the cycling all the way through is for a couple things. Number one, it raises your center of mass. So
Right.
the higher you're picking up your feet as well as your knees, the higher your center of mass goes. Also, it will help you by extending your stride lengths a little. So what I've noticed with a lot of people when they try to really accelerate fast on the curve is their cycling will drop. So
Right.
maybe increasing your stride rate, like, you know, but if your stride length drops, you may actually just be quickening up your steps without accelerating. So
Right.
that was one of the main things when Doug and Alan, and then I heard Elias's voice in my head also, but I was like, oh yeah, if I maintain the cycling and I go all the way through. And the other part about that is I think it has a major effect on your knee drive. The
Right.
knee drive gets better the better that foot cycles. Like if you watch that Stephen Holm video, his foot comes up and kicks him in the butt. And then the very next frame, when you're going frame by frame, his knee is all of a sudden across his hip. It's like it goes from kicking him in the butt to up and across effortlessly. Whereas if you don't cycle that foot, it looks like you're kicking a ball off the ground. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's one thing to drag the takeoff foot, and there's some people now that are jumping really high doing that, like Fabian Delrid. I don't know if you've seen him. Look him up. I'll try to remember send you that. Look at Fabian Delrid. It's Delryd. He's Swedish, and he's 6'9", and he's jumped 7'7" 3/4" with a foot scrape. And I used to say, again, one of my famous sayings that has been shot down in the last couple of years, which is, I didn't think anybody could scrape their feet and jump higher than 7'4". Nope.
Right.
Saw, a guy from Texas Tech do that 2 years ago at the Mount Sac meet, and then now Fabian at 7'7" 3/4". So, but my contention is, even when I see those things, I'm like, yeah, but if they didn't scrape their foot, they'd jump even higher. So
Right.
that's the way my brain works.
Right.
Don't confuse me with the facts. I'm just going to tell you what I think. All right, sir. Well, hey, thanks for spending your time with us. Again, we had the pleasure of talking with Skyler Mott. Skyler is a great name for a jumper, by the way.
Yeah, it worked out pretty well.
Right? Right? All right, sir. It was a real pleasure. Let's stay in touch. Send me videos. Weekly. I will happily post you. Everybody loves watching your jumps. I forget every time I look, your numbers are climbing on that post. It's like, you know, I
Good.
haven't even read the comments. Have you been reading any of the comments on there?
It's great. I did look at a few of them. It's great to just see the feedback and to see what people think, because it's I mean, knowledge is everywhere. So
Yeah,
it's
well, they want
it's
to see you jump more than they want to hear me talk, because my analysis post of you got like 618 likes. But the video of you jumping is at, where did I put that one? Did I already go rushing by it? I can't keep it all straight. Oh, there you are. Skyler Mott, Bad Bunny by Monaco. So you open at 184, then 189, 194, 199, I guess.
yes.
Just sail over. So it looks slow, like almost like you're just floating. 199, 204, which is 6'8" ish. Then 210, your first. So you had one at that point, right? Is that why you picked 210? Because it changed.
Yeah, I had one and the Lehigh Lafayette dual meet record was 210. So I figured I might as well go for that and not,
Right.
you
Awesome.
know.
Yeah. Well, the one that the make was just easy floating thing. Yeah. So you're up to like 28.94 on likes, just crazy. So, all right, people, you got a lot of fans out there, obviously, and everybody's rooting for you to get 7 feet soon to join the 7 foot club, which only means anything to us here in the States because nobody else cares around the rest of the world, right? It's like, yeah, whatever. It's 214, right? So for us,
Right.
it's in feet. Paradoxically, since we left England, we adopted all the king's stuff, feet and yards and hands and furlongs. And there's all these weird old, English king stuff that we still hold dear. It's crazy. All right, sir. Been a pleasure. We'll do it again
Thank
soon.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for
All
having me.
right. Thank you, Skyler. We appreciate you.
Thank you. See you soon.
All right. Bye bye.
And that's going to finish it up here this evening with Skyler Mott. Again, many thanks. He's taking time out from his busy training and study schedule to spend time with us here on Raise the Bar. Some great insights into what he's doing. He was very, forward giving with his info on his training, and we're just very pleasant young man, very outgoing, and just glad to have him, sending stuff, and love to promote him. So be listening in again. Maybe we'll get him here in the future. And we've got a lot more exciting podcasts coming up in the next weeks and months ahead. We're rolling into a heavy track and field time, and the Olympics are coming up here, so we've got the U.S. trials and all the other trials around the world, and huge meets here in the outdoor even before then. And then we will, just be a great year. I had a recent reunion with the UCLA Bruins, specifically the 87 and 88 championship teams, the NC2A champs. Lots of fantastic athletes there, former teammates, former coaches, and got in touch with a lot of people I haven't seen for a long, long time. And we're looking forward to getting some of them here on the podcast. So until next time, this is Troy Haines signing off. Thanks for joining us here on Raise the Bar. And remember that we will be ranting more in the future. And we got a lot more things coming up. Barbara Bachaka, I'd like to get her out here as one of my guests. We did a podcast originally, but she's very shy. So we're going to try to talk her into that. And anyway, so until next time, signing off, Troy Haines. See you later.